spicy now.
All right, it's that time on Thursday night, and we are glad to be here as always. As always, I'm Mama Mac, along with Dr. Angel Falzone. That's who you are, isn't that you?
That's me. Last time
That's
I checked.
definitely you.
That's what that driver's license in my wallet says.
Oh, that's good. Licensed mental health counselor and PhD and other multiple degrees that you have cause you to be our resident expert, Dr. Angel. Yeah, aren't you glad about that?
Guilty.
Guilty. All right. All right. About a year ago, you went into private practice after many years of working for organizations and doing all kinds of mental health. We have a commercial that'll come on halfway through the show, which Tommy, our wonderful engineer, wrote, cut, all that. Unbelievable. And it tells all the things that you do. Thank you, Tommy. He did that for himself.
Yes, and well deserved.
Yeah. And it's really powerful, the commercial, because it just tells your areas of expertise. But in a nutshell,
I work with children, teens, adults, couples, and families.
Now, see, to me, that's everybody. The only thing you don't say there is senior citizens. You say everything else.
It's an adult.
Oh, adults. Okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, you don't talk about animals there in your description either.
No.
Okay, all right. Anyway, we've been doing this show 6 years, and it's exciting. It started in 2014. That's why our email address is goyard2014@gmail.com, and our website is goyard2014.org, O-R-G. Why would anybody want to go to our website? What's the value there?
Oh, there's great value in there because we have almost 6 years of shows up on that website that they can access, and they're titled, so they'll get a general idea what that show might be about. So when life happens, and life is always happening, there'll be a show to help them get through.
Life is always happening. And so last week we started a new series here. We did a 11, 12, we lost count, part series on coping with the COVID calamity, right? We started that towards the end of March, went through April, May, and now last week we started a new series, Coping with Change. Why is that an important topic, and why would that be a follow-up to coping with the COVID calamity, which, by the way, still is not over?
Well, no, it's not over.
I just wanted you to know.
It's not over. We're still living and dealing with it daily. Right. But coping with change, it embraces much more than just the COVID calamity.
That's right.
And we have a lot more going on than just COVID at this point.
What a year. I mean, we're in June of 2020 as we record this, and this has been a very difficult year.
It really has.
For most people.
Yes, and I have seen some very funny memes on Facebook.
You have?
So the one that got me laughing last night was a DeLorean that looked like it was all burned up, and it said, "Don't go to 2020." It broke the flux capacitor.
Well, yeah, kind of the way it is right now.
But it is the way it is. But then, someone else had posted that just because the first half of a year has been rough doesn't mean the whole year.
There you go.
And remind of that was the Atlanta Falcons losing that Super Bowl to my New England Patriots at 3-24 at the halftime, and New England came back to win it.
There you
go.
So
just because you have a bad first half does not mean you're going to have a bad second half.
Okay, I like that optimism, even though that is related to the Patriots, which I'm not crazy about. But
it's a great example.
It is a great example. It really is. So, so often we think life is going to just keep on ticking along like it has for a long time. In fact, the years go by very quickly. I was driving tonight to the station, and I thought, I've been doing this every Thursday night for 6 years. And then I think about our Sunday afternoon show that starts at 3 here on this network, and I've been doing it for 14 years.
Wow.
So it's like we get into a habit of, or a routine is really the word I want to say. We get into a certain routine in our lives quite often, right? And
sure,
so we're like just expecting it. Life will always continue like that.
Sure, we get this rhythm going, and so we kind of it helps us to feel safe, to feel secure, to predict things, and very minor changes to that rhythm might be, we get a week off for vacation, or we're going to do, but then we're back in that same rhythm.
We're back into that, and that's our quote unquote normal.
Our normal.
We've been talking a lot about normal, new normal, old normal, all those kinds of normals. You want to kind of, explain to our audience what we mean when we're talking about normal?
Oh, well, normal is kind of what generally goes on for the majority, like, of your circumstance or of the population. But here's the thing, normal is such an obtuse word. Like, what is normal? Well,
because everything is subject to change.
Everything is constantly changing.
Right.
So it's not really, a lot of people are striving for it. I get it in the counseling room. They come in and I'll go, what is one of your goals for therapy? I just want to be normal.
Wow.
What does that mean?
Right.
I need to know, what does that look like for you? So
does normal, that word, correlate with things staying the same?
For some people, it does correlate to things staying the same. For some people, it is having their life model and mimic those lives around them. That's what they think normal is. But the truth of it is, there's no such real thing as what normal is.
We're going to talk more about that in just a minute. If you are just joining us, you can go to youtube.com. Are we okay? We are. Okay, youtube.com/TanTalkRadio/live, and you'll see us right here in the audience, or in the studio. You're the audience. We're the studio. Okay, and the other way is you just put it up on Facebook, right?
Yes, we are.
So it's on our Go Yard page?
It is on my personal page and your personal page right now.
All right, so you can go to one of those, Angel Falzone or me, Marcia McAllister, either one, and see the live show right now, which also means that you can call in if you like.
Yes.
If you have a comment or question about this whole discussion about normalcy, here you can call 727-441-3000, and we'd love to listen to you and get your question or your comment, and that would be great. 727-441-3000. Okay, these shows are always recorded, like our Sunday shows are too, and they become a podcast right here on TanTalkNetwork.com. Another way to catch up with shows you missed, go to TanTalkNetwork.com, go to podcasts, and look for the name of the show. This show's name is Go Yard. Our Sunday show is Living the Good Life. I think I got all the commercials done.
You did.
Right now, let's go back to our normalcy, where we are sitting here discussing the topic of the hour. That's our normal right now for every Thursday night starting at 6:06 p.m. That's our normal for 6 years.
Yes, that's our routine.
I'm surprised you haven't kicked me off the show by now.
No.
Because I give you such a hard time sometimes.
You do give me a hard time a lot of times,
yes.
But, it makes it more fun.
All right. Okay. That's good. All right. So let's go back to normalcy, because I think a lot of people are saying that. I hear that word. I hear the new normal. This is our new normal. This is I want to go back to the old normal or whatever. And I think that that whole thing is motivating a lot of people to feel sad. Mm-hmm. Because they're not back in the old normal.
Sure, it leaves us feeling sad. So it's kind of like they're in the waiting room.
Okay.
Right, and they've been in this waiting room for a long time.
Now, ever since early March or late February.
Waiting for that old normal to return. And so then you get like these little glimpses of hope where, this is opening and that is opening. But the reality of it is still not what it was before, and things are completely different now.
And people are, in some states, the coronavirus rate is spiking right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is not over.
Mm-hmm. I was just listening to a conversation of individuals today talking, and they were talking about how different it is to just eat out with that salt and pepper aren't on the table, and condiments are now brought in little individual serving things, and things that once were the other way of life.
And we didn't think a thing about it, picking up a ketchup bottle that probably 400 other hands had touched in the last week, right?
Yes.
We never thought anything about it. Now we are very germ conscious, I believe, and rightly so. We don't want to get sick, and we need to be very careful where we go and what we do. and how close we are to people.
Sure. And so no matter how...
That's why I'm sitting over here.
I know, because I'm full of germs too.
Yes, I've got a 3-foot window here. So
no, but and we're reminded of it constantly.
Sure.
Anytime we go to do something, there's always people in masks. There's signs everywhere, 6 feet apart. There's announcements that come on in certain places. We're seeing if you go into a restaurant, they'll leave 2 or 3 tables empty in between. So it's different. And it's not what it was.
Okay, so it's different. Mm-hmm. So different is not necessarily bad, but in this case, because these changes came about as a result of a potentially killing disease, right? Mm-hmm. That different is scary.
It sure is.
It has an element of fear in it.
Yes.
And as I was thinking about what we were going to talk about today, driving to the studio, I kept feeling that we need to discuss fear, because I believe that a lot of times we cannot accept, quote unquote, the changes. And this whole series is about coping with the changes, right? Mm-hmm. We can't until we face certain fears.
Okay.
All right. So think about that. I mean, it's not uncommon for people to say, I'm not afraid of that. I'm okay. I'm not afraid of that. I'm young. I'm this. I'm that. Right?
Sure.
Because they have been told that if you're young, whatever. Okay. But yet young people still die from COVID.
Sure. And here's the thing, when you're talking about fear too, is there's been so much information that information's all contradicted each other. And so at this point, everyone's really confused of what is safe and unsafe, and
absolutely, that
fear internalized. And so when we hit that fear level, we might not consciously, like you just said, I'm afraid, but our body feels that fear.
That's what I'm thinking too. Because you mentioned last week the stress makes you gain weight, right?
Yes.
You want to explain that to our audience?
Absolutely.
Because none of us have had any stress in the last 5 months. So if we ever get into any stress, we should know in advance what we're looking at, don't you think?
Sure.
I jest. I'm teasing, right?
I got you.
We've been living in constant change.
Actually, I just presented on coping with stress today in a workshop. And so when we have chronic stress or stress that happens for a period of time, any stress, it releases chemicals in our brain. It releases adrenaline, which makes our heart rate go faster, our blood pressure go up. That's what gives you that spike of energy for something that might be a threat, right? In the moment. That's when we can put the brakes on our car immediately without thinking about it, rationalizing it. We just do it. We respond quickly. It gives us this hyper alertness. The other hormone that gets released when we have stress or fear is cortisol. And cortisol works off of our sugars in our body, the glucose.
Exactly.
And so that is what puts us at that risk for gaining weight so we're constantly releasing this adrenaline and cortisol, and so our heart rate's faster, our breathing's faster, where our blood pressure spikes. There's where we have cardiovascular issues, right? And then the sugar levels are off in our body. We're storing more fat. Our immune system isn't functioning at its great rate. And then our muscles start to tighten, and we start experiencing aches and pains in the body,
back pain,
headaches,
leg pain,
tension,
migraines, yes.
Arthritis will flare up, any inflammatory thing, yes.
Okay, I think this is a really huge point that you're talking about tonight, Doctor, which is that there are physical, and we're going to talk in a minute about emotional, but you're discussing physical things that happen when we are going through stressful times of change. Is that what I hear you saying?
Absolutely. That's what happens physiologically.
Medically.
Biologically. Absolutely.
Okay. So for the person out there that goes, bingo, that's why I just gained 10 pounds and I didn't want to, right?
Sure.
What do you say to them on how this series is coping with change, right? Mm-hmm. That's been a change that a lot of us have experienced, extra pounds that we were not trying to put on, or we were trying not to put on and we still put them on.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. And so
that's my case. I'm trying not to, but yet for some reason, my body says, no, you're going to gain a little bit here.
Every time you go to put the jeans on, they're a little tighter, and you're like, oh, did I dry those too much? No, I'm just expanding a little. The way it's happening from the cortisol. Some other things that have put people at a higher vulnerability to gain weight has been the emotional eating. And so that's a response to the stress that we tend to crave more high carbs and high sugar foods when we are stressed.
Sure.
And therefore we are also, it's a twofold. Helping that weight gain happen. And how do we get through that is we have to manage our body's effects of the stress. We need to know what's happening to our body so that we can put some supports in and help manage what's happening.
Okay, so to the listener out there that says, bingo, that's me you're talking about right now, because I think it is a lot of us, okay, that are feeling this. What are you talking about? Let's be specific. How do you handle this?
Sure, let's get specific. Like, one really great thing is exercise. And exercise for the fact that it releases protective chemicals over our body and protective hormones that help to burn through those stress hormones.
Okay.
And so not only are we getting, air and oxygen and stuff to our body and we're making it move, but it's actually releasing some of those protective hormones for us as well.
Okay, exercise. What else?
So that's a great way of managing it. Self-care is another really great way. So I'm going to back up one second. When we are dealing with change, all change is stressful. Happy change or negative change.
You know what? That's true. Whether or not you have a new baby in the home, or whether or not you've just bought a new home and you're moving, whether or not you have a new job, whether or not something wonderful has just happened to you in a relationship, change causes stress. Is that what you're saying?
That is what it does.
Whether or not you just got engaged or whether or not you just got divorced, it doesn't really matter. Change causes stress.
Change causes stress. Like we want to fight that change. So when we experience any change, it's stress. Now our body, when we have stress, cannot differentiate between positive stress and negative stress.
There should be like a P on it or an N.
Yeah,
positive or
it does
negative.
the same thing to our brain, no matter if you are finishing your college degree or getting married or you're grieving the loss of a loved one or, whatever is causing that stress, it's going to release the same chemicals in our brain.
How do we really define stress? What is stress?
Ooh, that's such a
good
question. You're really giving me a test on a Thursday night with
I know,
no notes
no
in front of us.
preparation, no notes.
Pressure there.
That's called a wing it special, and we do it all the time. It has nothing to do with chicken wings, right? It's
True
just
story.
wing it. Okay, go ahead.
And so stress it's the pressures that we feel in our life. Positive
That's a good
or
word,
negative.
pressure.
Yeah, it's
pressure.
a pressure because when we feel stressed, we feel that pressure, like almost literally. Like people will come in and say, like, I feel like someone's pressing on my chest. Like I feel that pressure. And it can be positive stress. Like sometimes stress is really helpful. Like if you're trying to meet a deadline, like it releases those chemicals like, adrenaline. So what are you getting? More energy to get your project done and meet your deadline, right?
Well, you've got so many college degrees, but I will say this because you can understand this, and not me too. But years ago in college, there were times for an exam that we only had, say, 55 minutes to do that exam. And I can remember still that feeling when I looked at the clock in the classroom and I was like 15 minutes from running out of time and still had so much to do on that test, right?
Sure.
And I remember that. I can still feel that feeling. Is that bizarre? But I can feel that, I got to hurry. I got to get this done. I got to think. But the problem is when we're under that kind of stress, sometimes we don't think well.
No, we do not think well. And there's reasons why we're not thinking well. And it happens within our brain. But sometimes that little stress is a good little push for us to like release and get more alert and get through a task. But see, our stress responses were only meant to be hit for small periods of time.
Okay.
And not very frequent. That's where it works the most effective for us.
Okay.
Unfortunately, our life, our culture, our lifestyle, is continually hitting those stress responses all the time.
And so this is huge right now with coping with change. One of the main things we have to learn to cope with is stress.
We have to cope with the stress to cope with the change.
And coping means what?
Coping means having mental flexibility and resilience, like getting through that change in some positive manner for yourself and still.
So not letting it take you down.
Right, exactly. So like when we are faced with change can lead us to an opportunity for growth
Right.
or an opportunity for decline. That's what's going to happen when we have
We're not going
change.
to stay the same.
We're not going to stay the same because there's change.
Well, obviously, yeah. Right, there you got
Gotcha.
me. You got me there.
It's all right. It's Thursday night.
Yeah. So change by itself means something's going to be different.
Something's going to be different. And so, and some people, when we see that change happening, like, we want to resist it. Like, that's natural.
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm afraid of it, so I want to ignore it or pretend like it's not happening.
Ignore and pretend like it's not happening, I think, is one thing that a lot of people do all the time. We see that with people who don't wear masks.
Well, yeah, we
in
see that with
public,
all
right?
kinds of things. Exactly.
When we've been told that would be the best thing to do, and yet people are acting like it doesn't apply to them.
Exactly. So that's that ignoring. Does it make the change different? No, it can lead to all kinds of problems for us when we ignore a problem. Another thing we might do is run from that problem, that geographical cure, where we want to get away from that problem. Or I've heard a lot of people have been making plans of moving and taking jobs across state, across country, out of the country at this point. Like, in the last couple of weeks, I've heard several people making this plan to move.
Plan to move to another country?
I have a couple of people doing that, yes.
Okay.
Because somewhere in their head that...
Okay, so what's their thinking then?
I think they're trying to run from that change.
Running from change. Okay.
I think some of them are trying to run from that change. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And what's wrong with that?
You can't outrun change because it's always happening, and the change it's what's inside of you. Like, we can't always have control over what's changing, and especially right now we're seeing that we can't control a virus.
We can't at
control
all. No.
This political unrest and this discrimination. We can't as an individual. We can't change
fix it.
The tropical storm that came last weekend. We can't change that, but what I can change is how I respond to that.
The tropical storm last weekend that we had brought rain. It brought gloomy days just when my kids arrived, and they wanted to be at the beach and wanted to be in the sun and all those kinds of things. So there were a few days where there was nothing we could do about that. So we just did fun things in the house. So, I mean, we did cope.
You did, because that was mental flexibility.
It was, because instead of sitting around, I wish, when's the sun coming out? Let me check my phone. Oh, well, I just checked my phone. No, not for 3 days. Okay, so...
And
right?
sat and whined about it, and I'm so miserable, there's no sun. Like, you could have ruined that time.
Right.
But you use mental flexibility, which is a way to cope with stress and change.
Is that a attaboy you're giving me or something
like that? I am giving you a great
Congratulations.
You're a great example tonight.
Oh, thank you.
So instead of focusing on the negative part of that change,
right.
you found how can we turn this change and respond in a positive way?
Right.
And you probably made wonderful, great memories.
We did.
Instead of...
If you have 2 little babies around, you're making great memories, right?
Of course you are. But some people would have sat and just moaned and groaned
been upset about the weather.
Called
right.
20 of their friends and posted on every social media.
And so when we talk tonight about coping with change, we're talking about giving you positive ideas about what to do, and the fact that you have to learn to cope. You have to learn to cope.
We need if we are not learning to cope, then we are taking a lot of damage in from the stress that we are.
Absolutely, we are.
Having in our lives.
And that is only going to make things worse. We're going to break. Don't go anywhere. You are listening to Coping with Change Part 2 on Go Yard, and don't leave. Call somebody and say, why don't you call and check into this show. See you in a minute.
Weekdays. Tan Talk. Entertaining and informative radio for the Sunshine State.
Dr. Angel Falzoni specializes in a variety of therapeutic areas, including trauma, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, stress management, self-esteem, interpersonal relationships, ADHD, behavioral addictions, as well as spirituality issues. A Florida native, she holds multiple degrees, including a bachelor's in education and philosophy, a master's of arts in professional counseling and marriage and family therapy, and a PhD in psychology. Dr. Angel is also a Florida licensed mental health counselor. She has worked with youth and adolescents for 14 plus years and has worked extensively in women's mental health for the past 6 years. She has worked in agencies providing mental health services to family and youth at high risk. Dr. Angel is an accomplished psychotherapist who works with children, teens, adults, couples, and families. Dr. Angel has advanced training and experience in working with LGBTQ-specific individuals and issues. Dr. Angel can help you. Just call for an appointment at 727-501-6557 or online at drangelsdevelopment.com. Dr. Angel Falzoni, support for individuals, couples, and families. 727-501-6557.
Prompt professional service is what you will receive when you allow Marcia McAllister of Charles Rittenberg Realty to help find that perfect home or list your home for sale. With over 23 years of experience in the Tampa Bay area, you will enjoy a smooth transaction from start to finish. Call Marcia today at 727-417-0707. Now is a great time to buy or sell a home. Call Marcia McAllister at 727-417-0707.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
All right, welcome back. We used that song last week, and it just really fits right now, doesn't it?
It
Man
does.
in the Mirror. Why?
Well, why? Because a lot of times when there's change that we have to go through, we're looking outside of us for other things to change. Like
Right.
we want the rules to go back to normal. We want these, things outside of us to change because we feel like we're a victim to the change. But the truth is the
Ooh,
change
that's
occurs
good.
inside of us. If we want that change, we need to deal with that change. We need to deal with it by looking in the mirror. And how do we respond to that change?
I like what you just said there. This is where people get depressed.
Mm-hmm.
They get wondering if life is ever going to get back to quote unquote normal when they take on the victim mentality. Because the other word I kept hearing as I was driving and praying about this show today was self-pity. Self-pity and fear. Okay? So a lot of times we are bogged down by how this is affecting me.
Yes.
Right? And we're not thinking about how it's affecting our neighbors or our children who live across the United States or whatever. I mean, of course we do, but I mean, we're so absorbed or so obsessed, I guess, with how this is changing my life. COVID, political issues, all of it, right?
Sure. And so when we are taking that self-pity route, we have this helplessness to the situation.
Oh, yeah.
We can't do anything about it, and it's happening to me, and we kind of sit in that cycle of thinking, which feeds those negative feelings of, depression and anxiety and hopelessness. And then we start behaving, making poor choices or behaving badly, taking it out on our loved ones. We usually act the worst around the people that we care about the most.
Sure.
And so that's that self-pity mentality. And when we sit in that, we are continuing to feel the stress, and we're
Right.
allowing those hormones to continue to take over and damage our bodies, our systems, our emotions, our relationships. Like, it damages all the parts of our systems here.
Okay, so when we are in a thing as bad as we are in right now, COVID, political, the economy, all of it, and we're in that we have an outcome in our head that we want it to be, right?
Oh, we all have some kind of mental image of what we think the solution will be and or should be.
Okay.
And we kind of get really disappointed when it's not the solution. I think we have a caller.
Okay, caller. Nan. Hey, Nan.
Hey guys, how are you?
We're good. We're talking about change, coping.
I heard that. Yeah, I've been listening to that. I wanted to weigh in on something. About 2 years ago, professionally, I had moved to another position. I'm a support staff. Moved to another position that was actually a prestigious position. It was a big deal to get this job.
Yeah.
And so one of the bosses just took a disliking to me. I'm not quite sure why. Had me removed from there. They bounced me to 2 other locations and 2 other kind of department things. And I was going, what is going on here, you know? And what helped me make it through that was strictly God.
Right.
Because they gave me some really mundane projects, and I said, I'm going to do the best I can do.
Right.
And I had the grace to deal with that. I mean, for 3 weeks solid, I did the same thing by myself for 3 weeks and had 3 weeks of fun, believe it or not. But that was the way that I responded to that change instead of taking it as an insult that I just basically got, in a sense, demoted from a very nice position. But God helped me through dealing with that particular change.
Okay,
and
so you made a choice, though, Nan, to either go down with the ship and feel very sorry for yourself, right, that this awful thing had happened, or you decided to make the best of where you were. Is that what I hear?
That's exactly what you hear. Yes, ma'am.
Sure, and that's exactly what we're talking about is how do I choose to respond to things that are happening outside that affect me, but I can't control those things that are going on. She couldn't control where her job was placing her or what duties they were assigning, but she had complete control over how she responded to it and how she was able to use that mental flexibility and her thinking instead of looking at this is happening to me. How can I make my day better? What can I do with this? And instead of it being, a drama kind of, so to speak, it became a moment that those 3 weeks she found enjoyment and satisfaction in.
So right before Nan called, Nan, we were talking, I'm sure you heard us, about feeling sorry for ourselves, right? And you have just given us a life example, right, of being placed in your dream job only to have it yanked out from under you, right? Go ahead with that.
Sure. And all of that out of our control. And, our natural response is, well, first, a lot of fear when there's especially employment change, right? Because that's our livelihood, that's our bread and butter. And feeling all that fear, like how do I respond to this? How do I go forward? It's a disappointment. It's a loss. Mm-hmm. It's, loss of a dream.
It's an embarrassment, perhaps.
Maybe a professional embarrassment. What are people thinking? What's going on? What's wrong with me? Like all these questions,
I was going to say
right?
that you go back, start thinking of, okay, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me?
Sure.
Nan, did you experience any of that, even for a second? Probably.
Well, only for a second, because it was like, okay, I figured that God's in control. He knows why.
Okay.
One of the locations I was at, as I write poetry, gave a poem to one of the ladies, the guidance counselor there, and I was like, So, you kind of go through and you have good attitude and you let them see you have good attitude. You do wonder, what are they thinking about me? Why am I here? But if you have a good attitude, I kind of ran into a Zoom meeting about 2 months ago, didn't even realize she was who she was. And she sent me a private message about, you really made an impression on me when you were at our location. I'm like, wow. Cool.
Well, there you go. So you don't know what's really happening in other people's minds, right? When you're going through something drastic like this change.
You do not. Yes.
Right. Thank you.
I wanted just to weigh in. So
thank you, Nan. Thanks for calling in.
We have another caller.
We have another caller.
Betty.
Nan and Betty are a part of our radio team on Sunday, and we love it when they call in, and they don't do it very often, but we're glad to have you both call in. Betty Thomas, talk to us.
Well, I was, I'm a longtime listener.
Yes.
Appreciate both of you and your words of wisdom. But, one of the things, you were talking about is, some people really dread change. There's that fear factor involved. I used to have that fear factor involved because everything was always status quo. It was always the same. Then as I had gotten older, I really liked change because it gives you an opportunity to try something new. And it gives you an opportunity to grow in your own life and in your family life. But, it's a personal, with some people, it's a personal issue, as you were talking about. But I've noticed that in the last few years that I've had a lot of change in my life. Some of the changes hurt me deeply because I had to give up things that were material things. But as I looked towards the future, things were better for me. And I have to bring in the Lord here because the Lord had something better for me, something bigger and better. So those things that we have to look forward to is to not fear, because there's always something bigger and better ahead. We may go through some valleys. We may go through, maybe on top of the mountain for a while, but we may also be in the valley.
Right.
But, those valleys teach us a lesson, and that's what we've kind of went through these last few weeks, is some valleys with some pretty different stuff that we're not used to, and change is one of them.
Right.
And I believe that, with what you both have, brought forward, is that a lot of us have to have a mind change.
Yes, we do. Mindset
to
change.
Look at the positive. There's so much negative in the world that we have to look at the positive things in our life of where we've been and where we are going, and look back of what we talk about journaling a lot, where we've been and where we've come from, and for some of us it's pretty big steps, but they're good steps. There's that chance to grow. So. Hope I haven't been too repetitive.
No, that was great. We appreciate you calling in. So really what I hear you say is change can be an opportunity. And I like that. I wrote it down. That's very good. It can be an opportunity to grow. It can be an opportunity to face some fear. It can be an opportunity to accept what's something you can't do anything about.
Sure.
Right?
Exactly.
Sure.
Exactly.
And of course, we definitely believe that with God in the midst of all of this that we're going through, in the changes, etc., He knows, He sees what's going on in each of us personally, and He also sees what's going on with the COVID situation and all of this. And we need to look for the opportunity. That's what I hear you saying, Betty.
Well, and there are, and I think it's brought, speaking from a personal standpoint, it's brought our family closer together because we were confined together. We had to find a way to cope.
Yeah. Right, sure.
And it gave you an opportunity to step outside of your comfort zone and say, okay, what are we going to do here? Okay, we can play games. Okay, up here in Michigan, the weather didn't turn nice till a couple of weeks ago. And thanks for sending us the tropical storm, because we got hit with that yesterday.
Oh, okay, yeah. Our
so I
pleasure,
appreciate that, guys.
Yeah,
appreciate that a lot.
Right.
But again, you find that coping mechanism of how you can deal with change, how you can deal with your lights being off, for almost 14 hours, or other people, how they've made it through the desolate times. They made it through on the other side, and they've grown through it. So. We are blessed. We are blessed, even though there are things that we can't control. There are things that are out of our reach. But you know what? We've always seem to come out on the other side.
Amen.
So, appreciate you both very much.
Thank you, Betty, and thanks for calling in. That was great. We really appreciate that. So we'll talk to you soon. In fact, you're going to be on the show with me this Sunday, right?
Yes, ma'am.
3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, so our listeners can catch us then. All right. Thanks,
yes,
Betty.
Ma'am.
Okay,
you guys be blessed.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too.
Angel, let's go back to what Betty just said here. Change can be an opportunity. It can bring an opportunity, because I think a lot of people do not see change that way.
No, they do not. And it is an opportunity. It's going to either be an opportunity for growth or an opportunity for lack of growth, crisis, problems, or stress, or so. It's an
Fear,
opportunity.
depression.
And so, kind of tying in both what they had both contributed, which was awesome, and I always appreciate when they call in. The mindset that we have. So, Nan talked about how her positive attitude was one of those things that helped her cope with that change and to get through that change and have that opportunity for growth. And our attitude is fed off of our feelings, which is fed off of our mindset, which is what Betty was talking about.
Right.
And what our mindset is fed from is what we feed it. So
That's
we
right.
have complete control over this mindset that we have developed. Are we feeding our mind with fear and negativity? And, I had to use the word awfulizing in a report today. And
Is that a real word?
it is a real word, but spell check did not know that word. So I had to get out my
Awfulizing
psychological
or
dictionary.
What's the other one?
Catastrophizing.
Right.
But a lot of us are doing...
Explain what that means. Some of our
Sure.
people may not know what awfulizing is.
Awfulizing and catastrophizing is where we're always thinking in worst case scenarios. We're always thinking the worst possible outcome is going to happen. We expect the worst possible outcome. And sometimes that translates when I'm sitting in the counseling room and maybe somebody's kind of going through a little bit difficult time and they might be struggling, but they have some good resources financially, but now they see themselves as homeless and on the street and begging for food, when reality
That's awfulizing.
that's catastrophizing,
Or
right?
catastrophizing. Yes. Hard to say.
But when we get stuck in that, we can't see outside that. So
Right.
what we feed that mindset is what we're growing in that mindset. So I'm going to ask our listeners, what are you feeding your mindset? Like we have to start when we want to
Yeah.
deal with the stress and change, we have to deal with how are we looking at that?
Right.
What's our
Exactly.
perspective?
Yeah. And if we are constantly, and I know people, and everybody does, who keep their TV on 24/7, the latest, this was back a few weeks ago in particular, but concentrating constantly on the awful pandemic
Sure.
we are experiencing. And probably that would translate into, what if I get it? Do I have a good chance of getting it? That kind of stuff. Don't you think?
Sure,
Those kinds of thoughts.
And then, feeding all the conspiracy theories and like all this other negativity that happens. And
Right.
we need to be aware, but we need to watch what we feed.
Exactly.
A lot of times when parents have their kids, they don't just go give their babies, they're not putting soda in their bottles and giving them candy bars. Like they're watching what goes in their children, the nutrition they take, right?
Absolutely.
Because why? The babies are growing, and
Right.
what they feed that baby is going to go to the quality of the growth the child makes. And so, same thing with us and our mindset, though. And we need to be protective of our mindset.
Just like when a mother is pregnant, and since our 14th grandbaby is on the way, when people are pregnant, like my kids seem to be quite frequently, it is very important that the mother involved be careful what she eats,
Absolutely.
what she drinks,
Because it's going to
Right.
impact how that baby grows.
smoking or not smoking, things like that. These are all very important things that mothers that have babies inside of them should be aware of, and most mothers, well, I think a lot of them are in this day and age. However, when it comes to emotionally, that's one thing. That's physically.
Right, we see that.
We can see that. Okay, yeah. Don't you dare take that glass of wine. No, leave it right there.
Right.
But when it comes to emotionally, it's not as visible, Dr. Angel.
It's not, but the concept is very much the same and alive. So our mindset is made up of what we feed our mind constantly, what's getting the most time and attention from our mind. And so when we are feeding things that are encouraging or positive or things that are uplifting, we are going to experience more positive feelings.
Well, do you remember Popeye?
Yes, I remember Popeye.
Remember Popeye?
Yes.
Okay, Popeye, when he had a situation coming up, he would grab a can of spinach.
He got his spinach.
And suddenly his muscles would get strong, right? And he would go do whatever he needed to do. So instead of sitting in a corner crying, I never saw one cartoon where Popeye was crying. I always saw Popeye rising to the occasion. This is a show about Popeye and spinach. And he would take that can of spinach and gobble it down. I can't even imagine how, since I can't hardly stand to eat anything but lettuce spinach. That's fine, not the canned spinach. But I don't know how Popeye did it. But he did it, and he knew that was the formula to get him out of a mess.
Right.
And he rose to the occasion.
So, yes.
That's
and
my
what
metaphor
he ate,
for tonight.
I like your metaphor, except people want it to work that way. So... So mindset.
I might have known you would have tricked me there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You know, I had to take
Explain why you're shooting me down right now.
I'm not shooting you down completely.
Just
it's
partially,
not instant.
right? A partial shoot down?
Right. So mindset
Okay.
is developed over time.
Okay, right.
And we can't just all of a sudden I'm having a change or I'm having a crisis or I'm having, these problems and, let me read these great encouraging quotes
Right,
and, I'm
right.
strong enough to get through it. No. Mindset is developed over time.
So really the Popeye metaphor is not good. It is not good because it was an instant thing that he did. It was a cartoon.
Right. Well, of course it was a cartoon and it worked, but it doesn't work because our mindset develops over time.
Yes, it does. So much for Popeye metaphor. I don't think I've ever used Popeye as a metaphor.
I don't think you have on this show.
I know I have not. No.
No.
Because I would have known not to do it again because it would have been shot down.
But no, but we needed that metaphor because that helps us to talk about that it's not an instant thing.
It's not an instant thing.
And so we want to work through stress. You want to cope through stress and change.
Yeah.
It's the foundation that we're laying every day by we are bringing into our minds, what songs we listen to, what programming we entertain ourselves with, what people we choose to hang around, because all of that becomes our mindset.
I want to address the people concept here when it comes to all of this change that's going on right now, the effect that people in our lives have, good and bad.
Sure. We're taking in information all the time. And so when we are hanging out with our friends or family or loved ones or coworkers, and every time there's a situation, it's always negative, they're awfulizing or catastrophizing and seeing the worst case and everything, we start learning how to look at things and see the worst case in everything.
Sure we do.
And when we are surrounded by people that when there's an issue, they step back, okay, what can we do about it? Can we get help about it? What are some solutions? Like, those are people who have mental flexibility and are going to be able to cope with that stress in a healthy way.
Mental flexibility. Why is that so important? I'm writing it down.
Sure, because, so the lack of mental flexibility is like the example you gave earlier when we're confronted with a change or a problem and we only see one solution to that.
Right.
Okay, so that's the
Popeye,
only way
spinach.
we think that this solution, this problem can be fixed is this one way. Mental flexibility means we can accept that there are alternative ways to get a resolution that would be acceptable to this problem. May not be the perfect one, but it may be okay one. And so that there's multiple paths. Kind of like when we use our GPS systems all the time, right? When you put your address in your GPS and the GPS wants to route you this one route that it determines is the best route. However, have you ever been on that route and the road is closed or there's construction or a ball game's getting out and the traffic is, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to take a turn and do an alternative route, right? We flex that, except little Miss GPS in my car doesn't like it. It's always like, make a U-turn and 1,000 feet.
Right,
and I keep telling her, no, I'm going this way. There's more than one way to get there, right? Same thing. That's what mental flexibility is.
Okay, so this is drastically important to our coping with all the changes that 2020 has brought so far.
Mm-hmm.
We have got to stay hopeful.
Yes.
We've got to stay expectant that things are going to improve, whatever that means for you, right? We've got to be growing our flexibility.
Yes.
How do you grow your flexibility?
We grow our flexibility by A, feeding that positive mindset, B, keeping our mind open to the possibility that there are multiple ways to get to a solution for an issue. Just like you did the last weekend. Your weekend was rained out. Y'all could have just sat there and watched little beach videos going, wish we were there, but we can't be there. Instead, you decided wasn't the perfect solution. The perfect solution would have been to be on the beach, but you found an alternative acceptable solution to that problem and you enjoyed it. That's how we get there. We have to be open-minded enough to accept that we can do
Popeye
this.
never ever ate a can of corn that
No.
I saw.
No.
He was not flexible.
No, he was not.
So it really, this is an important topic we're talking about right now, coping with change, because change is happening to all of us
Very rapidly, too. Yes.
around the globe. And how we handle it, the mindset that we develop or don't, the doldrums that we fall into, the depression, the anxiety, the fear, the worry, the self-pity, those things are going to drag us down. That's not coping with change. That is reacting to change.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And we control that. We control that response. So are we going to react? Are we going to take the whatever happens, and, that's where we get that stress happens to our brain and we're in that impulsive and we're emotional and we're out of control of what's happening to our systems? Or are we going to step back and say, I'm choosing to respond to this. I am choosing to, hey, let me bounce ideas off of people that I trust in my life. Let's look for other ways to solve this issue.
So responding rather than reacting.
Correct.
Okay. We've talked about that a lot on the
Yes,
show
we
through
have.
the years, but responding is just you're going with a plan or a mode of action, right? Reacting is
Yeah, reacting is just, it happens in the moment, and usually you regret it because you usually you do something that you're embarrassed about or wish you could take back.
You have 1 minute to sum what up.
Wow.
Sum this show up, which I think was a good show.
I think it was an amazing
Very
show.
helpful show.
And I
It
think
helped
so.
you, I can tell.
So when we are coping with change, we need to start feeding our positive mindset, and we need to start be willing to be open-minded, and we need to consider there's alternative solutions to issues.
And if we do all that,
We will be able to cope with the change without it having that chronic destructive stress.
and then we'll just gradually begin to realize we're getting through it.
Yes,
So people, the bottom line is there's hope.
there is hope.
Don't give up. Don't fall into self-pity, fear, depression. We're going to talk more next week, part 3, coping with change. Call a friend. Tell them you need to listen to this. Go to tantalknetwork.com, go to podcasts, and go to Go Yard, and you can get caught up in this series. Or if you missed the previous series on the COVID calamity, you can catch it there also. tantalknetwork.com, go to podcasts, go to Go Yard. God bless every single one of you. This has been
Dr. Angel.
and Mama Mac bringing you Go Yard, and we will see you next week, God willing, and the creek don't rise.
Good night.